if we go back to the stick person up here, and let's make this stick person a brand new baby. So they have their 3 needs. Okay, so we have love, security, and self-esteem, right? So let's think about this as we go through this. Love is how this little baby wants to feel and how it interacts with the parent so that it knows that it's secure. But remember, there's no language yet. This is all feeling. This is how the baby feels. No language, meaning they can't give meaning to something linguistically like you or I can. The self-esteem part is really important in this learning because what is this from a need perspective? Now, remember, these are not desires, these are needs, right? These are biological needs. The self-esteem part is the self-identity part. It's as this little child is beginning to develop an identity for themselves, like who is this person? In order to determine how they fit in the world when they start to have the ability to actually do that. So this is controlling how the information that's coming to them is interpreted. And this is where the core wound begins to have the ability to be set up. So the core wound is when there is any difference in how the safety is interpreted versus the biological danger of this child potentially dying, because that is the worst thing that can happen to the baby if there's the separation with the parents. So people are always saying, well, how is it that these core wounds get set up? And it doesn't have to be one very big, explicit, traumatic event that happens. It can be little things that happen over a long period of time. It can be different things that happen over a period of time. And it has a lot to do with how this baby starts to interpret the things that are happening. In other words, the meaning that they give something. So if we have a core wound, if we're looking at, let's say, unlovable, and worth, right? So not worthy. They start to develop a core wound where they're unlovable and they're not worthy. And that becomes this foundational core wound that the child is growing up with, and it wants to be avoided, right? So the idea is the subconscious mind does not want the person to know what the wound is because it's starting to develop patterns as to how to deal with mom and dad as it goes through life. Those patterns are only to get this child from birth to outside of the parent's house, right? It's not conscious in the child, it's subconscious. So that's where we have this comes in. Here's the patterns. These are behavior patterns that show up based on the core wound. And they're tested, right? So the child will attempt to be one way, or they will say one thing, or they will do something. And they'll see that whatever it is threatening for them in the moment begins to calm down, or they get a different reaction. So that's like, okay, the subconscious mind is going, okay, this is the desired outcome. This is the pattern that's then developed for this child. And we keep doing the pattern over and over again so that that child feels somewhat safe and certain about the direction that they're going through their childhood. Now, what did we say happens when we start to develop this pattern? What happens is the shame and guilt starts to get really big, and we begin to move away from our own authenticity. So the child over time stops trying to be authentic and does more and more of the pattern that's working for them. The more they continue, every time they will try to do something, that is leading toward their own authenticity, where they would actually become aware of their divine desire over time, when that gets shut down and the parents put that kid in a very narrow view of what is the behavior that is allowed in that household, what is the emotional expression that's allowed in that household, then they, like one by one, they start shutting those things off and they behave just like the parent tells them to behave, okay? So they're developing this pattern. The pattern becomes their view of the world. It's their map of the world. Every time they start to go outside of the house, they start to go to school, they may be going to church, they're going to social activities, they're getting away from the parents and they start interacting with other individuals. The pattern is looking for the same pattern that's in the house. It's looking for pieces of that pattern that it can identify to say, okay, here's how I know to behave, here's how I know to act. When you take the child out and you put them in a new environment where they don't have that yet, very often you'll see nervousness or anxiousness, fear, they won't know how to behave. The subconscious is on high alert because it's in a new environment, doesn't know what to expect. So very quickly, it starts to look for all of the different pattern recognitions in that environment so it can say, this is how to behave. Now, here's something that's interesting that a child will do. If there is nothing that resembles the pattern that they see, they will often do something within the pattern itself to get a reaction in that environment. And if the reaction is the same kind of reaction they would get in the house, they'll continue with it. If it's different, then one of two things starts to happen. They'll either move away from it and try something else, or they'll start to develop a pattern within the framework of the new environment that they're in, because they're still little and they're still having the ability to test different social environments that they are being exposed to. So as they're going through this, and they're mostly concerned with human behavior, the child's really looking at the behavior of all of these other people and, who is in authority in this room and what are the roles that the other kids play or the other adults, what is the role that they have? They're trying to psychologically figure all of this out. What else are they being exposed to at this point in time? Well, they're being exposed to all the material things that we have in life. They're being exposed to the different ways that the kids are dressed, the parents are dressed, right? So it's all of these different things that are going to fit into a model of their original human needs, because some are based in needs and some are based in wants. The first things are based in needs. I need food. I need air, obviously, right? I need to have some kind of connection and interaction with the people that are around me. But then I start to look at all of the different things that people have and how they're using things in the world. And as I become aware of that, it is going to cause me to want or not want what people have. And this is where the mimetic desires for things start to get picked up in life. But let's not forget, it started in the house. It started with the things that the parents use. And then, of course, with all of the things that the parents use, there's the reasons why they use them.
Thanks for listening to the Successful Mind podcast. And if you like what you heard and you want to know more, go to davidnagel.com/free stuff.